"You can't come in." The guard's voice sliced through the air like a door slamming shut. He stepped forward, arm outstretched, palm open, badge gleaming under the lobby chandelier. A line of fancy cars outside reflected the girl's face on the polished metal. Tired, hair tied up in a rush, a plain suitcase beside her, road dust on her sneakers. Two women stopped near the red carpet and whispered. A young man pulled out his phone, ready to record the embarrassment about to become cheap entertainment. She took a deep breath. "I have business with apartment 4701. I need to go up." The guard didn't even glance at the bag. He sized her up like someone who thought he already knew everything. "Nobody gets in without clearance. And you," he wrinkled his nose, "definitely don't look like someone who belongs upstairs." A dry laugh cracked through the reception. The concierge cleared his throat to hide it, but his eyes sparkled with curiosity. Behind the girl, the revolving door spun like a cash register. Laughter, judgment, hurry. The expensive fragrance of the lobby tried to cover the smell of rain she brought from outside, but it was as if the whole building was programmed to reject anything out of place. "Please," she insisted, keeping her voice low. "Just let them know I'm here. Apartment 4701 will approve it." "Apartment 4701 doesn't approve anyone unless they're registered in the system. And the system doesn't know you," the guard said, sliding a clipboard onto the counter. "Full name." She gave her name. A few faces turned, trying to recognize it. Nothing. The guard flipped the clipboard, typed, waited. The screen came back blank. "See? No name, no picture. Exits the same way you came in." "I'm not leaving," she said firmly. "You'll regret treating me like this once you find out who I am." "A threat now?" He chuckled with half a smile. "Look, lady, I've done this job for years. I've seen all kinds of important people try to bend the rules. I'll say it nicely one last time. You can't come in." A stylish couple walked between them, dragging expensive luggage. The woman shot a look that mixed pity and pleasure. That small satisfaction of seeing someone being put in their place. The man made a point of tapping his metal bracelet against the reader, like he was stamping a passport to a world the girl would never get to see. She gripped the handle of her bag, pale fingers, a tight knot in her stomach. She'd rehearsed what she would say so many times, but none of her versions included being stopped by a doorman in front of an audience. "Call the building manager," she asked. "Or the office. I'll wait." "The office doesn't answer without an appointment," said the guard, already annoyed. "And you're blocking the residents' way." Two teenagers laughed loudly when the automatic door opened with a burst of cold air, lifting the hem of the girl's jacket. An older man in a dark suit tried to squeeze past her. The guard gestured broadly, forcing her to step back twice, like removing a pawn from the board. "The sidewalk line's right there," he pointed. "Stay behind it." She looked down at the thin marble strip dividing the inside from the almost inside, a small line that now felt like a canyon. "My ID's here," she said, pulling a slightly crumpled envelope from her inner pocket. "If you read it, you'll understand." "I understand rules, not papers anyone can print," he shot back. But when the envelope hit the counter, the silence that followed was strange. It wasn't the sound of paper. It was the weight of certainty. The guard opened it reluctantly, like someone opening a letter that isn't theirs. He read the first line. His brow furrowed, then the second. He blinked. "What is this?" "An authorization," she said, steady. "Signed." "Signed by who?" He tilted the paper, looking for a stamp. This looks like..." "Read it properly." Behind her, the woman with the sweet perfume took another step closer, curious. The guy with the phone adjusted his focus, and someone whispered, "It's a scam, bet on it." The receptionist, once indifferent, now leaned forward, trying to see over the counter. The guard cleared his throat, handing the paper back. "Still not in the system." "The system's slow." "Ink isn't," she replied. "All it takes is one call." "I'm not calling anyone," he said, lower but firmer. "Imagine if everyone showed up here with printed papers demanding a call. I'd lose control of the building." The word control hung in the air. The girl felt her legs urging her to step back, but she stayed. The suitcase weighed less than the past she carried. She had a reason to be there, one that didn't fit on a front desk spreadsheet. Then call your supervisor. He checked his watch. Shift change. He's back in 30 minutes. I'll wait. Outside, the drizzle had returned. Droplets stuck to the glass like messy signatures. The girl nudged the suitcase with her foot, but didn't move an inch. I'll wait here. The standoff began. Their breathing synced with the honk of a car parking nearby. The guard crossed his arms. She uncrossed hers, showing the posture of someone unwilling to yield. A cafe worker appeared from the lobby carrying a tray, silently asking if anyone wanted something. The guard shook his head without even turning around. "What's your problem with me?" she finally asked. "Is it the clothes? The suitcase? What is it?" "My problem is with people who ignore rules," he replied. "In buildings like this, rules exist to protect the residents from—" He looked her up and down. "Inconveniences. What's really inconvenient is judging people beforehand." The word came out clean, effortless, but it stung everyone who heard it. The couple by the elevator pretended to check their watches. The concierge tapped his pen impatiently, as if he had something far more important to do. "Look, miss," the guard went back to his lecturing tone. "If everyone does whatever they want, order turns into chaos. And when things get chaotic, I'm the one who gets blamed. And when things turn into humiliation, who pays for that?" She shot back. The guard's eyes hardened. "The main elevator's not for guests without registration. End of story." She took one step. He took two. People held their breath. The sound of rain outside grew louder, like even the weather wanted to watch. "If you lay a hand on me, I'll call the police," she said slowly. "And when they show up, I'll show them this document, and I'll say the names of everyone who stopped me. Full names." The silence that followed wasn't just fear, it was doubt. For the first time, the guard's certainty faltered. He reached for the lobby phone, dropped it, picked it up again, looked at her, annoyed that he even felt the urge to give in. "What's the name I'm supposed to—" he muttered through his teeth. The revolving door squeaked again. A middle-aged man rushed in, umbrella dripping onto the mat. He took in the scene, wiped his jacket and gave the guard a questioning nod, like, "Problem?" "Everything's under control, sir," said the guard. "Control?" The man raised an eyebrow. "With half the lobby frozen?" The man turned toward the girl. "Are you lost? Can I help you?" "No," she said, eyes fixed on the guard. "I'm exactly where I need to be." The man gave a polite smile, the kind of smile from someone who thinks everything can be fixed with the right phone call. "Which apartment?" 4701. The man's smile shrank a bit, almost too subtle to notice. He looked at the guard. "Call up," he ordered, like asking for a quick espresso. The guard hesitated. His hand hovered over the keypad. His finger wouldn't press down. Maybe because if it did, the world as he knew it might shift. The girl noticed. I can call for you," she said, taking her phone out. "No need," the man interrupted, already impatient. "I'll handle it myself." He pulled out his own phone, dialed fast, waited. "Marcelo?" "Yeah, it's Paolo. There's a—" He glanced at the girl, searching for a word. "Visitor here, saying she needs to go up to 4701. Name?" He looked at her. She said it again, each syllable landing with precision. On the other end, the answer came brief and muted to those around. Paolo's face, however, showed the hit. He tried to rearrange his expression in seconds, from doubt to alertness to a cautious respect. "Got it," he said, hanging up slowly. "Give us a moment." The guard crossed and uncrossed his arms, uneasy. "So?" someone whispered at the back. Paolo slipped the phone into his pocket. He stepped closer to the girl, choosing his words carefully, as if walking on freshly polished floors. "You said you came alone?" "I did," she replied, not stepping back an inch. He nodded slightly. "All right." He turned to the guard. "Don't do anything else for now." "But sir, she—" The guard tried. "I said for now. Nothing." A simple order, but it hit like pulling a handbrake on a downhill road. The girl brushed her hand over her suitcase, feeling the fabric's texture, reminding herself she was still there, that this wasn't some bad dream. Inside her jacket pocket, along with the envelope, was another smaller, older paper with a signature that never faded from the memory of who wrote it. She felt it with her fingertips. That was her courage. The elevator doors opened with a soft ding. Everyone looked. No one stepped out. The empty steel cabin seemed to call her in and mock her at the same time. The guard cleared his throat, trying to reclaim the scene. "Miss, the elevator's not going anywhere without permission." "I know," she said, "but doors don't stay locked forever." Paolo glanced again at his phone, as if waiting for a message that wouldn't come. The lobby clock ticked another minute of hanging tension, and the rain grew heavier, thickening the sound around them. A second doorman appeared from the side hallway, whispered something in Paolo's ear, and handed him a sealed brown envelope. Paolo opened it, read 2 lines. His eyes lifted, met hers, and for a moment there was no lobby, no laughter, no marble line, only recognition. "So it's you," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. The guard went pale. The receptionist dropped her pen. The guy with the phone forgot to hit record. The girl didn't smile. She took a breath, placed the envelope on the counter, and said quietly, "Now let's see who really isn't allowed in." The heavy silence of the lobby lingered, even as her memory pulled her backward, long before she ever stepped into that fancy building. In her mind, she saw flashes of a childhood where doors always closed. The little girl who never had the right clothes for school, who hid her simple sandwich when she saw classmates unpacking lunchboxes full of imported fruit. Oh, ChatGPT Dissy, the same voice that had once heard teachers whisper, "She's hard-working, but she won't go far here." The weight of being left out started early, and as she grew up, nothing seemed to change. She worked in places where people always treated her like she was less. In meetings, her ideas were ignored until a co-worker repeated the same sentence, and then the praise came, but for someone else. Many nights she stayed late just to avoid sharing an elevator with those who sneered at her worn clothes. She had learned to swallow humiliation in silence. But that scene in front of the guard made every other moment echo back. It wasn't just about the building's front desk. It was about every time someone told her she couldn't go somewhere. The suitcase she carried wasn't full of clothes, but heavy memories. A degree earned through scholarships and sleepless nights. Old letters proving who had quietly supported her, and a rare document signed by someone few dared to oppose. That person was the key to everything. When she was younger, she met a man who believed in her when everyone else doubted. It wasn't a romance, nor a charity favor. It was recognition. He saw in her a vision that others didn't have the patience to hear. This man, few words but many means, left her something more valuable than money, a written promise, and that very promise was the paper in the envelope she had handed to the guard. But her past was more than a signature. Behind that seemingly ordinary young woman lay a path marked by iron choices. She had learned to survive when she had nothing. She had learned to barter when she had no cash. She had learned to watch quietly, soaking up the mistakes of those who laughed at her. Every mark of rejection had turned into fuel. Every closed door became a memory she now used to plant her feet on the cold marble of the lobby. The guard only saw a girl soaked by rain, tired and too pushy for his taste. What he didn't know was that on her shoulders she carried a record of battles that would sooner or later make anyone who now looked down on her swallow hard. And she knew that. That's why she didn't step back. Her gaze wasn't pleading. It belonged to someone who held certainty. While she waited, she remembered a phrase she used to repeat to herself during the loneliest nights. No matter how many times they say no, I only need one yes. And when it comes, it will be final. Fate seemed to have chosen this building, this arrogant guard, and this curious audience as the stage for that yes to happen. And although no one there knew it yet, she was about to prove she wasn't just another inconvenient visitor. She was someone who had been kept outside for most of her life, but who now held the key to open the biggest door of all. The guard straightened, as if regaining control after the phone call. His eyes hardened again, now burning with wounded pride. He couldn't stand the thought that this plainly dressed girl had shaken his authority in front of everyone. "You hear me?" he said, projecting his voice so the whole lobby could catch it. "No name in the system, no matter what's in your pockets. This building isn't a bus station." Low chuckles escaped from the corners. The concierge, who had only watched before, now allowed himself a discreet smile, as if approving his colleague's firmness. The young woman remained still, hand on her suitcase, the envelope still on the counter. Behind her, a beige-coated lady with pearl necklaces glinting at the throat stepped forward and snapped, barely hiding her disdain. "My son, don't waste time on this kind of person. It's obvious she's trying to pull a scam. Look at her clothes, at that bag. This building isn't for people like that." She lifted her chin and cast the girl a look that mixed scorn with the small pleasure of humiliating someone. Her husband, a grey-haired man with slicked-back hair, chimed in. "It's shocking. These places are so vulnerable now. Anyone shows up with a paper and thinks they can walk in. No surprise." They moved toward the main elevator, but before stepping in, the lady made sure to turn and spit the words at the girl like venom. "You should know your place." The elevator doors closed, leaving the echo of those words hanging in the air. Fueled by that chorus of contempt, the guard took 2 steps forward, closing the distance. "See, nobody here knows you. Nobody here wants you around. You're making a fool of yourself." 2 more residents appeared, young, wearing branded athletic gear, headphones hanging around their necks. One of them pointed subtly and laughed. "Man, look at her. She brought a real travel-sized bag. Bet she's going to claim she owns the penthouse." The other guffawed. "Or some lost heiress. It's always the same story." They swiped at the biometric reader and went up before anyone could answer. The girl inhaled, eyes never leaving the guard. Each insult cut like a blade, but also served as a reminder. What was about to unfold would be stronger because of those slights. The guard didn't stop. He now felt like a judge condemning a defendant. "I'll give you one more chance to leave without more scene. If you don't, I'll call the police. Oh, ChatGPT Dees, then it won't just be embarrassing. It'll become a real problem." She didn't answer. She simply slid the envelope further toward the middle of the counter, like someone planting a flag in enemy territory. At that moment, a new figure entered the lobby. A resident everyone knew, Mr. Augusto, a well-known lawyer, always in a crisp suit and carrying a leather briefcase. He watched the scene with a measured kind of curiosity. Stepping closer, he spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. "I've seen this sort of thing before. Simple folks making up stories to squeeze money out of the gullible. I suggest you," he pointed at the guard, "be even stricter." Augusto's words landed like a verdict. The whispers grew louder, as if every resident now felt entitled to toss more fuel on the fire. The girl, however, didn't look away. With every insult and every attempt to diminish her, the flame behind her gaze only burned brighter. And though everyone assumed she was alone, in just a few minutes, someone from apartment 4701 would prove what none of them dared to imagine. The air in the lobby thickened. It wasn't just humiliation anymore, it was a show. They weren't there for justice. They were there for spectacle, like an audience craving blood. The guard fed on that energy. His pride swelled with every nod of approval. He drew in a deep breath, straightened his uniform and declared, "Last warning. Leave on your own, or you'll be escorted out." The crowd was ready to applaud the expulsion, but what they didn't know was that her departure wasn't part of the plan. The game had barely begun. Silence hung heavy, like a verdict about to be read. The guard adjusted his tie, ready to make good on his threat, even drag her out if necessary. The residents, spread across the lobby, waited with hungry eyes, eager to see the girl thrown back into the rain. But before he could take a single step, she spoke. Her voice came out steady, without a tremor. "Call Dr. Henrique Albuquerque." The name echoed against the marble walls like a gunshot. The effect was instant. Some residents exchanged puzzled looks. Others widened their eyes. That name was not ordinary. It carried weight, power. The guard gave a nervous laugh, but it sounded hollow. "And who's this Henrique guy, huh?" Another one of your made-up characters? An elderly man with white hair, who had been quietly reading on one of the armchairs, suddenly stood. His newspaper fell to the floor. What did you say? Did you just say, Enrique Albuquerque? Yes. Call him, she repeated, her suitcase steady by her side. Tell him I'm here. The murmurs grew louder. The name carried history. Enrique Albuquerque wasn't just another resident. He was one of the owners of that entire building complex, a powerful businessman known for his influence and quiet authority. The kind of man few dared to challenge, and everyone wanted to please. The white-haired man shook his head, astonished. If she's connected to Dr. Henrique, you're all making a serious mistake. The guard snorted. Oh, please, every week someone shows up claiming to know big names. It's the oldest trick there is. Drop an important name to scare people. But his tone had lost its edge. That name had unsettled something in the room. Even the receptionist, who'd been amused before, now looked uneasy, biting her lip as if realizing this could be bigger than anyone thought. The young woman kept her calm tone. If you're so sure it's a trick, then prove it. Call him. The guard hesitated. For a moment his fingers hovered over the keypad but refused to press down. I'm not falling for that act. The crowd split. Some chuckled again, clinging to the idea it was all fake. Others, silent, stared at the girl with new doubt in their eyes. What if it was true? What if that ordinary-looking woman really did have ties to the most powerful man in the building? One resident, a well-known businessman, stepped forward. Listen, man, the name Enrique Albuquerque isn't one to be thrown around. If she's lying, settle it fast. But if she's telling the truth and you refuse to call, this could blow up in your face. The guard's heart pounded faster. His authority was slipping through his fingers. He tried to hold his posture, but every gaze around him now felt like pressure. The girl leaned slightly forward, eyes locked on him. I'll wait. Call him. The words sounded more like a command than a request. The phone on the counter might as well have weighed a ton. The guard swallowed hard. Before he could move, Mr. Augusto, the lawyer, cleared his throat loudly. If she truly has ties to Dr. Henrique, I'll take responsibility for confirming it myself. Augusto pulled out his phone and dialed directly. The entire lobby leaned in to listen. On the other end, a firm voice answered, Albuquerque residents, good afternoon. The lawyer looked from the girl to the guard and said clearly, I have someone here insisting on speaking with Dr. Henrique. She claims he knows her. A tense silence filled the air. Even the young athletes who had mocked her earlier moved closer, awkward and curious. The guard, now flushed red, tugged at his collar as if his uniform were choking him. What's her name? Asked the voice on the line. The lawyer repeated it. On the other end of the line, silence stretched for a few seconds too long. Then the answer came. Steady, serious. One moment, please. The lawyer hung up slowly, face grave. They'll call back in a moment. The lobby felt frozen. The tension was almost visible, like static in the air before a storm. Everyone stared at the young woman, who stood her ground without a tremor. The envelope still rested on the counter, a silent reminder that she hadn't come empty-handed. The guard tried to mask his unease, but the confidence was gone. That proves nothing. It will, she replied. When he says it himself. The main elevator opened again. No one came out, just emptiness. The soft ding seemed to mock the crowd's impatience. And then the lobby phone rang. The guard jumped, nearly dropping his clipboard. He looked around, hoping someone else would answer. But everyone knew this was his call to face. He picked up, voice shaky. Lobby desk. From the other end came a deep, unmistakable voice. This is Enrique Albuquerque. I want that young woman to come up, now. The color drained from the guard's face. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The pearl-necklaced lady clutched her collar, stunned. Lawyer Augusto shut his eyes briefly, as if accepting a public defeat. The young woman simply took back the envelope, lifting her suitcase calmly. The game had turned. That voice still echoed in everyone's head. I want that young woman to come up, now. Enrique Albuquerque's tone had been sharp, absolute, impossible to dismiss. Even so, the truth didn't settle easily. The shock was too heavy to swallow at once. The guard, still pale, placed the receiver back slowly. He looked at her as if seeing a ghost. His mouth opened, but no words came out. He had no argument left, no excuse. And in that uneasy silence the residents reacted. The pearl-necklaced lady struck first, her venom wrapped in disbelief. That must be some mistake. Dr. Henrique would never let someone like that in without notice. He probably doesn't even know who you are. He must have been confused. Her husband added, "Exactly. People like this know how to twist things. She probably took advantage of some loophole. There's no way she's really his guest." Lawyer Augusto, who moments before had been so sure it was all a scam, tried to rescue his authority. Dr. Henrique is a very busy man. It's common for him to take calls without checking all the details. He may have thought she was someone else. The young athletes, who had mocked her earlier, decided to pile on again. "Total setup," one of them said, pointing. "I bet she had someone fake his voice on the phone. Classic online scam trick." The words fell like stones, but the young woman didn't flinch. Her expression stayed calm, almost cold, as if she had expected every bit of it. She raised the envelope again and placed it back on the counter, locking eyes with the guard. "You heard his voice. You can't deny it." The man swallowed hard. His hands trembled, but he fought to stay upright. He knew that admitting the truth out loud meant confessing his arrogance, his humiliation, and pride is a fortress not easily torn down. I'm just following protocol," he muttered weakly. There might have been some misunderstanding, but the crowd wasn't done with its cruel judgment. The whispers turned into cutting remarks. "Probably forged those papers. She doesn't fit in here. Just an intruder. Nothing else." Each voice tried to strip away the legitimacy that Enrique's call had given her, because it's always easier to cling to prejudice than face a truth that breaks your comfort. Yet she didn't shout, didn't plead, didn't cry. Her composure only made them more uneasy. There's nothing more unsettling than someone who refuses to act like a victim. Then one of the residents, a middle-aged businessman, approached with a smug grin. "Let's say it's true. Let's say you do have some connection with Dr. Enrique. That still changes nothing. You don't belong here. You don't have the look, the manners, the—" He paused, deliberately glancing at her worn-out suitcase. "You don't even have the appearance." The silence that followed was sharper than any insult. It didn't need an echo. The words carried enough poison on their own. But instead of shrinking back, the young woman straightened her shoulders, refusing to fold. Manners can't be bought, and appearances don't erase truth. The line hit like a stone through glass, cracking the smugness that filled the room. Some residents lowered their eyes. Others scoffed, angrier than before. The guard, cornered, searched for an escape. "Still, I need to confirm directly with the floor." "Then do it," she said, steady. "Call again." It was bold, and boldness infuriated the kind of people who weren't used to being challenged. The pearl-necklaced lady stood up once more, outraged. "This is outrageous! This insolence has gone far enough. She should be escorted out immediately before she causes more trouble." But as the woman spoke, the brushed steel elevator opened once more. The metallic sound sliced through the air like an announcement that couldn't be avoided. Every head turned. The hollow interior gleamed beneath the lobby lights. The guard took a deep breath. He knew that if he kept resisting, he was moments away from losing everything. He also knew that the longer he held out, the harder his fall would be. Still, pride wouldn't let him give in just yet. He looked at her and said, voice tight with tension, "Maybe you managed to get a phone call through. But until I see someone come down here for you with my own eyes, you're still just an intruder." The words didn't wound her. If anything, they seemed to feed the fire inside her. Because within her, there was one unshakable truth. Soon, the truth wouldn't need approval or a system or an audience. And the same people calling her a fraud now would be the first to bow when they learned who she really was. The lobby was thick with suspicion, poisonous whispers and disbelief. The young woman stood firm, unmoving like a rock in a storm. The guard, red with bruised pride, clung desperately to the story that she was just a clever impostor. The residents fueled the contempt, feeding off it like a shared feast. Then she did something no one expected. Without hurry, she opened the suitcase at her side. The zipper slid open, its metallic hiss echoing in the hushed hall. The guard frowned, ready to accuse her of anything. The pearl-necklaced lady stepped back, anticipating a scandal. From inside, the young woman pulled out a plain black folder. Simple, except for one detail that didn't go unnoticed: a golden embossed crest on the cover. It was unmistakable, the official emblem of the Albuquerque family. A wave of murmurs rippled through the lobby. That can't be real. Where did she get that? It's fake. It has to be fake. She opened the folder calmly and drew out a plastic-protected document. It was a deed, accompanied by a letterhead with a signature that nearly everyone recognized. The guard went pale. He tried to keep his voice steady, but it cracked halfway through. This could have been forged. She placed the document on the counter and pushed it toward him. The sharp thud of plastic against marble landed like a judge's gavel. "Read it, out loud." He hesitated, but all eyes were on him now. There was no escape. He grabbed the paper with trembling hands and began to read. "I hereby declare that the bearer of this document has unrestricted access to all properties and premises under my ownership, including, but not limited to, the residential building located at Rua das Palmeiras, number 1000, apartment 4701. The guard's voice faltered. He swallowed hard and kept going, the air heavy around him. "I sign this statement in full awareness of my rights as owner, acknowledging the legitimacy of her presence and her right to remain in such spaces without undue restriction." At the bottom, there was Henrique Albuquerque's signature, stamped with a notarial seal. The effect was immediate. The pearl-necklaced lady went pale. Lawyer Augusto wiped his glasses, stalling for time to process what he'd just heard. The young athletes looked at one another, confused, their arrogance dissolving into silence. One resident, who had been quiet all along, muttered, "That's the real seal. It can't be fake." The concierge, who'd been smirking quietly until then, gasped. The crest, the seal, the signature, everything was authentic. The young woman reached forward, took back the document, and returned it to the folder with the same composure she'd had all along. She didn't need to say another word. The proof spoke for itself. The guard, however, still tried to save face. "Even so, I need to confirm it. It's my duty." "Then confirm it." She cut him off, eyes locked on his. "Check every word, but understand this. The longer you delay me, the deeper your shame will sink." Her words fell like blades, and the most unsettling part was that she didn't sound angry, only certain. A certainty that disarmed more than any scream ever could. The same residents who had been eager to see her thrown out now stood divided between silence and discomfort. The show had flipped. The accused had become the accuser. Lawyer Augusto, still stunned, tried to gather a shred of dignity. "If that document is legitimate, then that means it means I have every right to be here," she said, steady as ever, "and that every one of you was wrong to judge me by what I wear." The silence that followed was heavier than all the insults combined. The guard dropped the document onto the counter as though it burned his hands. He looked around, searching for backup, but no one dared defend him now. His pride lay in ruins, and everyone knew it. The young woman closed the folder, locked the suitcase, and said firmly, "I told you you'd regret treating me this way." And right then, the elevator chimed again. The doors slid open slowly, but this time they weren't empty. A tall man stepped out, immaculate suit, steady gaze, presence commanding silence. In an instant, the lobby's noise turned to reverence. Henrique Albuquerque had arrived, in the flesh. Time itself seemed to stop. The entire lobby held its breath. The guard nearly collapsed, and the young woman, She simply lifted her chin as if she had been waiting for that exact moment. The sound of Henrique Albuquerque's shoes striking the marble echoed like restrained thunder. Every step carried silent authority, the kind that commands respect without a single word. The residents, once loud with their judgments, now recoiled like leaves in a storm. Even the concierge straightened up, shrinking behind the counter. The guard, who minutes earlier had strutted like a giant, now looked smaller than his own shadow. Cold sweat ran down his temples as he silently wished he could vanish before the approaching power. Henrique stopped in front of the young woman. His eyes studied her, and a faint, nearly invisible smile curved on his lips, the kind that said he knew exactly what was happening. "So you've arrived," he said quietly, but loud enough for everyone to hear. The heart of the lobby froze. Whispers exploded like sparks. He knows her. But how? Who is she to him? The pearl-necklaced lady, stunned, couldn't hold back. "Dr. Henrique, there must be some mistake. This girl showed up here with a filthy suitcase, insisting on entering without permission. We were only trying to protect the building." Henrique turned to her, his gaze sharp, cold, unwavering. "Protect the building? Or protect your own egos?" The words shattered the air like glass. The woman choked, her husband lowered his head, but not everyone was ready to stay silent. Lawyer Augusto stepped forward, trying to reclaim a fraction of the arrogance his title once gave him. "Doctor Henrique, with all due respect, you must see that this young woman's appearance doesn't match the standard of this residence. There are rules, expectations. If we start making exceptions, anyone could just claim—" Henrique cut him off with a raised hand. "Anyone," he repeated, his voice firmer now. "Are you suggesting that just anyone could walk around with a document bearing my signature?" The lawyer swallowed hard. No answer came. Then one of the sporty young residents, braver or just more foolish than the rest, dared to speak. "All right, fine. Let's say she does have that document. That doesn't mean she belongs here. Maybe it's just a formality or something." Henrique's eyes locked on him, and the boy trembled. "A formality?" His tone was steel. "I don't do formalities with strangers." The boys shrank back instantly, like children caught misbehaving in class. Still, resistance wasn't dead. A tall woman, one of the penthouse owners, spoke with cutting irony. "With all due respect, Dr. Henrique, we residents also have the right to know who comes in and moves among us. Don't you think we at least deserve to understand what connects her to you?" Every gaze turned back to the young woman. The challenge had been thrown. The phone call, the document, even Henrique's presence. None of it was enough. They wanted more. They wanted her to speak, to reveal something that would finally put her under their control. She held onto her suitcase. The moment seemed designed to crush her, but instead she straightened. She took a deep breath and met Henrique's eyes head-on. "I told them they'd regret keeping me out," she said, calm but unyielding. "But it's not time yet to tell them who I am." A shock rippled through the room. Boldness, defiance. Her words didn't justify, they challenged. She refused to explain herself, forcing everyone to sit in the discomfort of not knowing. Henrique crossed his arms. Behind the stern expression, there was a flicker of approval. He knew the kind of strength it took to face a hostile crowd without flinching. The guard, cornered, tried to salvage himself. "Sir, I was only following orders." She insisted, "I followed procedure." Henrique turned his head slowly toward him. "Procedure? Is procedure denying entry to someone carrying my signature? Is procedure humiliating someone in public? Or is it just pride, pretending to be diligence?" The man trembled, shame flooding his body. The residents stood divided. Some already felt the sting of guilt, others still clung to their arrogance. The tension was at its peak. Every word from her, every silence from him, only made the moment heavier. Then the elevator chimed again, like the conductor of a grand symphony of suspense. Everyone turned. The doors slid open, and this time it wasn't an ordinary resident. It was the building's administrator, carrying a leather folder identical to the one the young woman had shown. He walked straight to Henrique. handed him a sealed envelope and stepped aside. Enrique opened it right there in front of everyone and read silently. Then he lifted his gaze to the guard, to the residents, and finally to her. "It's time to end this show," he said, "and all of you are going to hear the truth." The tension swelled like thunder trapped in the clouds. What had begun as a scene of humiliation had turned into a courtroom awaiting its verdict. The silence was suffocating. Every breath sounded louder, every stare pinned on the young woman as if waiting for revelation or disaster. Enrique Albuquerque held the envelope firmly, his eyes revealing both weight and resolve. He finally drew in a breath, raised his chin, and declared, "This young woman not only has the right to be here, she has unrestricted access to this entire building." The words hit like thunder. Some residents exchanged shocked looks. Others stepped back, and a few muttered under their breath in outrage. The guard stumbled backward, hands trembling. The pearl-necklaced lady nearly tripped over her own purse. This is ridiculous," she shouted, her voice cracking. "It can't be true." But no one dared to back her up. The weight of Enrique's word was heavier than the entire crowd's prejudice combined. The concierge, who moments earlier had worn that smug little grin, straightened at once, as if performing in a play of obedience. He hurried to open the path to the elevator, bowing slightly before the young woman he hadn't even acknowledged minutes ago. The young woman didn't smile. She just grabbed her suitcase, lifted the folder, and began walking slowly across the lobby. Each step echoed louder than the insults that had filled that space. It was like crossing a battlefield after victory, leaving behind the wreckage of other people's arrogance. Enrique walked beside her, and that alone silenced every whisper. It was all the confirmation anyone needed. No mistake, no trick. If he was escorting her himself, then her place there was unquestionable. Every eye followed. The shine of her worn suitcase against the polished marble seemed symbolic, the collision of two worlds, where prejudice had just lost its first battle. When they reached the elevator, Enrique turned to the guard. "One more word of disrespect, and it won't just be your job on the line. Patience also has limits." The man lowered his head, unable to speak. The elevator doors opened. Enrique gestured for her to step in. She did, but not before glancing back over her shoulder, sweeping the lobby with her gaze. There was no anger in her eyes, only steadiness. It was as if she said without speaking, "You laughed, you doubted, but now you'll watch." As the elevator began to rise, the mood below shifted. The residents split into two invisible groups. Those who now looked at her with a quiet respect, and those who still clung to disdain, desperate to believe that no matter what permissions she had, she would never truly be one of them. Above, the elevator panel climbed slowly, 10, 15, 20, until the very top. Each floor seemed to carry away a bit more of the mystery. Who was she? Why had Enrique, the most powerful man among them, granted her such access? In the lobby, the murmuring started again. Must be a distant relative, or an illegitimate daughter. Maybe he's protecting her for some reason. No one spoke too loudly, but everyone wanted answers. Inside the elevator, the young woman's eyes stayed fixed on her reflection in the mirror. The face staring back held both the simple girl the guard had humiliated and the woman now being escorted upward by one of the most influential names in the country. The elevator stopped on the 47th floor. The metallic ding rang again, but this time, instead of mockery, it sounded like an announcement of something greater. The doors opened to a quiet corridor, soft carpet underfoot, walls lined with expensive paintings. Enrique motioned for her to step forward. "Now, it's time for them to start understanding who you really are," he said, voice low and commanding. She drew a deep breath. The mystery wasn't over, but she had crossed the barrier that minutes earlier seemed impossible. Down below, the residents remained restless. Some were already feeling shame, silently acknowledging their mistake. Others, trapped in pride, kept searching for ways to discredit what they'd just witnessed. What none of them knew was that what they'd seen so far was only the beginning. The real revelation, the one that would change everything, was still to come. The elevator doors closed, carrying the young woman and Enrique to the upper floors. In the lobby, the audience remained stunned, uneasy, unwilling to accept or fully understand what they had just seen. Murmurs and speculations filled the air, as if each person were inventing a version of the story that hurt their pride a little less. But the tension was far from over. Only a few minutes later, the sound of firm footsteps echoed from the side corridor that led to the private meeting rooms. A tall man appeared, silver-grey hair perfectly combed, a flawless dark suit, two aides following closely behind. Everyone knew his face. The true owner of the building, Paulo Albuquerque, Henrique's brother, and the one man even more feared. The moment he entered, silence struck. The whispers died instantly, swallowed by the air itself. The atmosphere thickened, heavy, expectant. Everyone straightened, some out of respect, others out of fear. The guard stiffened at once, trying to look composed, though his palms were slick with sweat. Paulo stopped at the center of the lobby. His cold gaze swept over every face. The guard, the residents, reading guilt like an open book. "What's going on here?" he asked, his deep voice echoing against the marble walls. Lawyer Augusto, ever eager to appear important, rushed to answer first. "Mr. Paulo, there's been some confusion. A young woman showed up claiming to have ties to your brother, but clearly she doesn't fit the kind of person who should be here." The guard tried to defend himself. "I was only doing my job." Silence. Paulo's voice cut through the air like steel, calm, but commanding enough to crush all resistance. The pearl-necklaced lady, trembling, still tried to explain herself. "We were only thinking about everyone's safety, sir. That girl could have been a risk." Paulo's gaze sliced her words in half. "A risk." He stepped closer, each movement dragging a thick wave of silence behind it. "Do any of you have the slightest idea who you were turning away?" No one answered. Heads lowered, eyes fell to the marble floor like guilty children caught in a lie. Then the elevator chimed again. The doors slid open, and out stepped Henrique, with the young woman beside him. She still carried her plain suitcase, moving calmly at his side. The contrast between her modest appearance and the grandeur of the lobby made the entire scene feel staged, as if the universe itself wanted their arrogance exposed. Paulo's eyes swept over her, sharp and assessing. "So, it's you." His words carried a weight that made the air tighten. The entire lobby went silent again. Even the staff, who had pretended to be busy moments earlier, froze in place, waiting for whatever came next. Henrique broke the tension. "She has every right to be here, and you know that." Paulo nodded once. "I do. But they need to know too. Every single one of them must understand the magnitude of the mistake they just made." A wave of unease spread. The pearl-necklaced woman stepped back, clutching her husband's arm. Lawyer Augusto cleared his throat, but no sound followed. Paulo turned to the guard, expression unreadable. "You denied her entry." The man tried to speak, his voice barely a whisper. I was following protocol, sir." She Looked? Paulo's tone darkened, his shadow falling over the trembling guard. "You dared to judge someone's worth by their appearance. In front of my family?" That word, family, hit like an explosion. The crowd gasped. "Family? Did he say family? That can't be—" The guard went mute, frozen by fear. His knees nearly buckled. The young woman finally lifted her gaze. "I told you you'd regret treating me that way." The words sliced through the room like glass, not spoken in anger but with quiet conviction, the kind that left no room for denial. Paulo inhaled slowly, then turned toward everyone and spoke clearly, his voice echoing through the marble hall. "This young woman is not just my guest. She's directly tied to our family. And all of you, so quick to judge, have just humiliated someone who never should have been treated this way." The impact was immediate and merciless. The same residents who had mocked her minutes before now stared in stunned disbelief. Lawyer Augusto went pale. The pearl-necklaced lady nearly collapsed. The once grand lobby that had been a courtroom against the young woman was now a tribunal against her accusers. And still, one question burned in every mind. Who exactly was she to the Albuquerque family? A daughter, an heir, a hidden partner. The silence thickened, suffocating, as everyone waited for the truth to finally drop. Enrique, standing beside her, folded his arms and faced his brother. Paulo, enough games. They deserve to know. Paulo exhaled deeply. His calculating eyes swept across every face before landing back on the young woman. "You want to know so badly," he said, voice low but heavy. "Then listen carefully." He paused. The seconds stretched into eternity. Even the proudest among them now trembled in anticipation. This young woman is the rightful heir to part of the Albuquerque empire. The sentence struck like lightning. Gasps filled the lobby. The pearl-necklaced woman let out a strangled cry. Her husband buried his face in his hands as if the ground had just opened beneath him. Lawyer Augusto staggered backward, his complexion ghost-white. The smug young athletes swallowed hard, their arrogance dissolving on the spot. And the guard broke. He stumbled backward, tripping over the counter, his clipboard clattering onto the floor, the metallic clang echoing like the final crash of his pride. Enrique spoke next, his tone steady and absolute. "The name you tried to deny her is the same name written on this building's deeds. The document she showed wasn't just an authorization. It was a title. The top of this tower, apartment 4701, belongs to her." The room went completely still. Those who once claimed she didn't belong there now stood crushed beneath the weight of truth. She didn't just belong. She owned the most prized space in the building. The young woman, still with her modest suitcase and simple clothes, was the new owner of the empire they worshipped. The silence lasted for several eternal seconds until Paulo delivered the final blow. "You all humiliated the owner of the penthouse." The words annihilated every last trace of arrogance in the room. The pearl-necklaced lady collapsed into the nearest chair, drained of strength and pride. Lawyer Augusto tried to form a defense, but only stammered incoherently, completely undone. The young men lowered their heads, wishing they could vanish. The young woman stepped forward, her voice steady and calm. She didn't need to raise it. "I warned you. I told you you'd regret treating me this way." She didn't need to say anything else. The silence said it for her. The shame on every face was proof that poetic justice had just unfolded right before their eyes. The guard tried one last time, voice trembling. I didn't know." Paulo turned to him, expression carved in stone. "You didn't know because you chose not to listen. You didn't know because you preferred to judge, and now you'll pay for it." Then, in front of everyone, he gave his verdict. "You're fired." The man's expression collapsed. He tried to speak, to beg, but no sound came. His knees almost gave out. The same guard who had arrogantly blocked her moments before was now publicly dismissed before the entire building. The young woman didn't smile. There was no revenge in her stance, only justice. Enrique placed a gentle hand on her shoulder and said softly, "Let's go. Your place is up there, not down here." She began walking toward the elevator again, but before stepping in, she turned to face the lobby. Her eyes swept across every face. There was no hatred in her gaze, only quiet certainty. "Never judge someone by appearances," she said, "because the person you're looking down on might already have everything you dream of achieving." The words hung in the air like a final verdict. The elevator doors closed behind her, carrying away not just the young woman and her suitcase, but also the illusions of those who thought the world belonged only to the well-dressed and well-born. Down below, silence lingered, heavy, suffocating, broken only by the bitter taste of defeat from those who had laughed at her minutes earlier. Now, they knew who she was, and worse than knowing, they would have to live with the memory of the day they tried to throw out the true owner of the place they called home. The elevator ascended, carrying the young woman to the penthouse that everyone now knew was hers. As the steel doors closed, the lobby seemed to hold its breath under the weight of revelation. The silence there wasn't peace. It was humiliation, disbelief, and shame. Upstairs, when the doors slid open, the scene was entirely different. The corridor, lined with soft carpets and lit by crystal chandeliers, looked like a stage awaiting the triumphant entrance of someone who just moments ago had been dismissed as an intruder. The young woman took her first steps. Her heart was still pounding, not from fear, but from justice finally delivered. Her walk no longer passed through scornful stares, but through the quiet acknowledgement of respect, even if it had to be forced. Henrique walked beside her, silent but watchful. There was pride in his eyes. He knew the battle she had fought alone, and now he was there to witness the beginning of her irreversible victory. Downstairs, the mood shifted again. Lawyer Augusto, who had called her an imposter minutes earlier, wiped the sweat from his forehead and muttered quietly, Maybe we judged too quickly." The pearl-necklaced lady, still trembling, whispered to her husband, She didn't seem like... But how did we not see it? Her husband said nothing. There was no defense left to make. A few of the more calculating residents quickly changed their expressions from disdain to polite smiles. Like actors switching masks, they began whispering among themselves, "We should welcome her properly. She'll need allies. Maybe we can." But everyone knew it was too late. The mark left by their arrogance would not fade easily. Meanwhile, the young woman walked through the corridor of the 47th floor, taking in every detail. It felt like crossing an invisible line that had always been closed to her. The double doors of the penthouse stood before her, grand, imposing, but this time not as a barrier. They were hers. Henrique extended his hand, offering a final gesture of acknowledgement. "This place is yours. Go on in." She touched the golden handle, the chill of the metal triggering a flood of memories. Every humiliation, every "you can't," every mocking laugh now seemed distant. She had endured it all to stand here. The doors opened. Inside, the penthouse was breathtaking. Wide glass windows revealed the glowing city below. Sleek, modern furniture blended with classic art pieces, and the silence was almost sacred. She placed her suitcase on the floor and took a few steps, her eyes absorbing the view. "So it's true," she whispered to herself. "I finally made it." Henrique placed a hand on her shoulder. "More than that, this place proves you belong." Down in the lobby, the residents still murmured in low voices. Some were already plotting ways to get close to her, to erase the poison they'd spread. Others stayed quiet, too ashamed to even imagine facing her again. The guard, meanwhile, stood frozen where he'd fallen, clipboard still on the floor. His face was the very image of defeat. He hadn't just lost his job, he'd lost his certainty, his sense of judgment. Too late he realized how wrong he'd been. Confusing appearance for worth. Upstairs, the young woman stood by the window. The city shimmered beneath her feet, each light a reminder that people should never underestimate those whose dreams reach further than what the eyes can see. Henrique broke the silence with a single, powerful sentence. "Now they've learned that respect isn't earned by what you wear, but by who you are." "Oh, ChatGPT dice." And for the first time, the young woman smiled. Not a smile of revenge, but of freedom. In that moment, she knew she had nothing left to prove. Every stare that once looked down on her would now have to rise when she walked by. Every mouth that had laughed at her in the lobby would now fall silent in her presence. And deep down, that was the greatest victory of all. The elevator rose, carrying her toward the penthouse everyone now knew was hers. As the steel doors closed, the lobby still trembled under the weight of revelation. The silence there wasn't peace. It was defeat, shame, disbelief. Upstairs, when the doors opened, the scene was completely different. The flawless corridor, lined with soft carpets and lit by crystal chandeliers, looked like a stage prepared for the grand entrance of someone who, just minutes earlier, they had called an intruder. The young woman took her first steps. Her heart was still racing, not from fear, but from the weight of justice fulfilled. Her walk no longer moved through sneers and disdain, but through something greater, respect, even if it had been forced. Henrique walked beside her, silent, observant. Pride filled his eyes. He knew the battles she had fought alone, And now he stood there, witnessing the start of an irreversible turning point. Down below, reactions began to shift. Lawyer Augusto, who had called her an imposter moments ago, wiped the sweat from his brow and muttered softly, Maybe we judged too fast." The pearl-necklaced lady, still trembling, whispered to her husband, She didn't look like, but how did we not see it?" Her husband said nothing. There was no defense left. A few of the more calculating residents quickly replaced their looks of contempt with artificial smiles. Like actors switching masks, they began whispering, "We should welcome her properly. She might need allies now." But everyone knew it was far too late. The mark left by their arrogance would never fade. Meanwhile, the young woman studied every detail of the 47th floor hallway. It felt like crossing an invisible line that had always been denied to her. The double doors of the penthouse stood before her, grand, imposing, but this time not as a barrier. They were hers. Henrique extended his hand, offering one final gesture of acknowledgement. "This place is yours. Go ahead." She touched the golden handle, and the chill of the metal brought back a flood of memories. Every humiliation, every "you don't belong," every cruel laugh now felt distant. She had endured it all to stand here. The doors opened. Inside, the penthouse was magnificent. Wide glass windows revealed the glittering city below. Modern furniture contrasted with classic art, and the silence felt almost sacred. She set her suitcase down and took a few slow steps, taking it all in. "So it's true," she whispered to herself. "I finally made it." Henrique placed a hand on her shoulder. "More than that, this place is proof that you belong." Downstairs, the residents still whispered among themselves. Some were already plotting how to approach her, hoping to erase their earlier cruelty. Others stayed quiet, too ashamed to ever face her again. The guard stood motionless, his clipboard still on the floor. His face was the very picture of defeat. He had lost not only his job, but also the confidence in his own judgment. Too late, he realized he'd been wrong, that he had mistaken appearance for worth. Now, inside the penthouse, the young woman walked to the window. The city lights shimmered beneath her feet, as if each one was a reminder never to underestimate those whose dreams reach farther than the eyes can see. Henrique broke the silence with a simple, powerful truth. Now they've learned that respect isn't given for what you wear, but for who you are. And for the first time, the young woman smiled, not out of vengeance, but release. In that instant, she knew she didn't need to prove anything anymore. Every gaze that once belittled her would now rise in respect. Every voice that mocked her would fall silent in awe. And deep within, she understood that was her true victory.